I searched my parents' names on the dark web. The videos I found were horrifying. When my friend first introduced me to the dark web, I was amazed at how such an unknown thing could house some of the most illegal things on Earth. Up until today, I had only used it for learning how to code and commit small crimes. But after the horrifying videos I just found, I don't think I'll ever use the dark web again. I first met my best friend Alex when a little bit after I got into high school. My parents had moved us to a new town, and I had no friends. It was lonely at first, but I got used to it. We moved because they were paranoid after many murders occurred in our town. I thought this was weird, moving across the country over that, but I let it go. The reason Alex and I became friends so quickly was because we both had a shared interest in the internet and everything it had to offer. I was a gaming addict and a Tier 3 Pokemon subscriber, while he was more of a coder and developer. 2 years later, we were still best friends. But now, we were much older and smarter. Alex had discovered the dark web, and he was obsessed with it. He pretty much spent every hour of the day on it, searching through anything you could imagine. There was nothing wrong with this, but one search he made was the biggest mistake of his entire life. I remember waking up to dozens of text messages from him one morning. This wasn't normal. Alex wasn't a very social person, and it was very hard to get words out of him. I opened my phone to see what he had messaged me. "Dupe, Jack, you have to come over right now. This is important. Jack, please wake up. This is urgent. Where are you?" These were only some of the messages, but the rest were very similar, with them all being urgent, and that I needed to go to his house immediately. My parents were both at work still, so I went over to Alex's house. When I arrived, there were 4 cop cars parked in front of his house, and there were dozens of people and news vans standing out front. I made my way through the crowd, and Alex's mother told the police to let me inside. I could see tears rolling down her cheeks as she opened the door. "What's going on, Mrs. Gonzalez?" I asked. "Alex missing," she said as she started crying. My heart sank. How could this happen? He had just texted me earlier that morning. That was when it hit me. What if he was trying to warn me? What if his text messages were related to his disappearance? Still in shock, I walked up to one of the detectives in the kitchen. "Is Alex going to be okay?" I asked. "Of course he is. He's going to be just fine. We're going to find him very soon." One of the detectives responded. Something about that response was off. It was like I knew he was wrong. Deep down, I had this slight feeling that I wasn't going to see him ever again. I remembered the text messages, however, and pulled out my phone to show it to the detective. He texted me this morning. "What if this has something to do with him going missing?" I said swiftly. As he began reading them, his expression quickly changed. It was like it got worse. He told me they needed to keep my phone for now to investigate the text messages, and said they would give it back to me later. I stayed around the house for a while. Not just because I missed Alex, but because I wanted to comfort his parents. They cared about me a lot, and it hurt to see them like that. His mother couldn't stop crying. Eventually, however, I went into Alex's room to see if I could find anything that might give a clue about why he went missing. I searched through everything, but I found nothing. But then I noticed something. Alex's computer was on, but his monitor was turned off. I looked for the button to turn it on and hit it. As the screen lit up, my heart sank. He was on the dark web. Obviously, this was normal, but for some reason, he had dozens of different tabs opened. I knew this part wasn't normal, so I closed the door and locked it and began going through them. At first, it was all pretty usual for him, but then things started to get weird. He had a tab open that was an article about a murder that had happened several years ago. The article said that it was a woman who was found dead in her apartment. Her body was mutilated, cut up, and covered in acid. I nearly threw up reading it and seeing the horrifying pictures of the crime scene. Not wanting to see any of it anymore, I switched the tab just to reveal another article about another murder. Confused, I quickly went through the rest of the tabs he had open, and they were all the same thing. They all were about some type of murder or crime. The one that stuck out the most to me, however, was one about a murder that had happened 2 years ago. At first it seemed pretty normal, but as I read further I realized what it was. It was about the murder of our neighbor that prompted us to move away. Confusion quickly swept over me. How did Alex know about this? I never told him about it, because to me, it wasn't that important. I figured it must have just been a strange coincidence. But then I saw the last search he had made on his computer. It was my last name. Horrified and confused, I quickly stumbled out of his room and back to the living room. "Is everything all right?" Alex's mother said, sniffing away her tears. "Yeah, I just need to go home for dinner," I responded. On the way home, so many questions and thoughts filled my mind. Why was he searching up my last name? Did he think that I had something to do with this? That must have been why he was texting me so frantically that morning. If only I could just explain to him that I didn't do anything wrong, but I couldn't. He was still missing, and I had to find out why. When I got home, I raced to my room and slammed the bedroom door shut and got on my computer. I loaded up my Tor browser and turned my VPN on. I knew what I had to do. I began typing in the letters of my last name, becoming more nervous after every letter. When I finally hit enter, nothing happened. It was just a blank screen. Confused, I refreshed the page, but once again, there was nothing. But why did Alex search this if there was nothing? I thought to myself. There must be something out there. I was getting ready to close the tab thinking I had ran into a dead end, when suddenly the page started to load. It took several minutes, but finally it loaded to reveal hundreds of videos. Immediately, I knew what they were. They were murders, but why did they show up when you searched my last name? I considered just stopping right there and turning back, knowing the horrifying things I would see if I continued on, but I couldn't. I knew this had to be why Alex went missing, so I clicked on the first video. As it started playing, I saw what looked like a woman strapped to a chair in some sort of basement or something. I quickly recognized who it was. It was our neighbor from 2 years ago. I could tell because she had the same heart-shaped tattoo on her neck. She sat there for a minute, struggling, panicking, and screaming for someone to help. However, suddenly, 2 figures walked into frame. At first, I couldn't tell who they were, but as they turned around to face the camera, my heart sank. It was my parents. My father was holding a knife, while my mother was holding a small scalpel. They paused for a moment before they started what was the most horrifying 5 minutes of my entire life. I watched as they cut her into pieces and listened as she begged for mercy, screaming the whole time. Blood filled the room as she took her last breath. When the video ended, it quickly went to another, revealing the exact same room and chair I had seen before. I was traumatized by what I had already seen, and I knew I couldn't watch any more of it. My parents were murderers, and I now knew the real reason we moved away 2 years ago. I knew there was something off about that, but I just never could have imagined that this was the horrifying secret that they had been hiding from me. This whole time I thought Alex was trying to accuse me of being responsible for these murders, but I was so wrong. He was trying to warn me. I scanned through more of the videos, each in the exact same room. I was just about finished, ready to go to the police so that I could tell them about what I had just seen when I noticed something. There was a new video uploaded today on the website. I quickly clicked on it and pressed play to reveal what looked like a man this time, strapped to the chair. He had a sack over his face, and I couldn't tell who it was. Once again, however, I saw my parents walk into the frame. My father walked up to the man and pulled the sack off his head. At first I couldn't tell who it was, but then I realized who I was looking at. It was Alex. "Hi, my name is Jane. I'm not sure if this will even be out there since I can't trust anything I'm seeing these days. But I'll start from the beginning. I am a 37-year-old surgeon for the most of the day and come home to my husband and my dog. And it was just a regular Saturday when the nightmares began. At first, I would just dream of dark voids where I wander around aimlessly in search of something. I'm not sure what, but my mind insists me that I have something to find in that awful darkness. And then after hours on end of walking around, I would just wake up. I thought nothing of it at first and just thought of it as some weird dream I had. And then the next day, it happened again. There was no difference the first few times, but when it happened for the 4th time, the dream changed. I was still in the void, but this time I couldn't move. I was just frozen in place looking in one direction, and I saw something off in the distance. It was just eyes, but there was something off about them. They weren't human. I woke up in cold sweat, but shook it off as the effect of some shows I watched earlier or a book I read. But throughout the day, I still couldn't stop thinking about those eyes. Night came around, I went to sleep, and there I was again, in the void with those eyes. except they were closer. I didn't see the thing move at all. It was all like a still image lingering for hours until I wake up in the morning. I decided to talk to my partner about these strange dreams, and at first he just brushed it off as rare occurrence, but after 2 more times of the creature getting closer, and me waking up in cold sweat in the middle of the night, he decided to start researching. Mostly the searches just resulted in meaningless suggestions like the recurring nightmares being an effect of substance abuse and trauma. But none of those were the case, as my job required me to be extremely focused. Then some suggested it could be the cause of a spirit. And since we didn't have anything else to try, we followed the instructions which, no surprise, did absolutely nothing to stop the nightmares. A week later, and I could finally make out the thing in my dreams. It was a slender, reddish-gray-skinned humanoid, reduced to skin and bones and abnormally tall, a wide, mouth-shaped hole in the shape of a round smile and 2 giant gaping voids for eye sockets, with 2 white, glowing dots looking at me. Honestly, the creature looked absolutely absurd, like some creepypasta you would find on the internet, but it instilled fear in me. What would happen if it got close enough to me? Would I be killed, tortured, or something even worse? I was scared to find out, so I decided to stay awake for the night to avoid having that dream again, since it seems the only way it can get closer is when I sleep. My husband thought I was crazy in believing a guy in a dream could physically harm me, and told me that I couldn't stay awake forever. He was right, of course, but the fear of looking into those eyes again made me stay awake. I began my own research, looking for medicine or anything to get rid of these nightmares. I tried everything, yet every time I went back to sleep, it was there, each time closer than the last. Eventually, I was fired from my job. It was inevitable, of course, considering my mental state, and my dog has began barking at me every night, and it drove my husband mad until he left me too. Strange things started to happen around the house too. First, it was small things like a glass out of place or a book on the floor, but then I hear footsteps and floorboards creaking. Doors are being opened, walls start to form cracks, and there are constant knocks on the roof. A few days after I dozed off, and the thing was there again, about 10 feet away from me this time. But when I woke up, my dog was gone, without a trace. I searched all throughout the house, and she was nowhere to be found. This thing was taking everything away from me. Now my life is just a cycle of trying to stay awake and being tortured by hallucinations, and my house taunting me during the day while still hearing the sound of barking at night. I'm too scared to even leave my own room now. I'm not sure how long I can stay awake until I eventually doze off again. Please, if there's anything I can do, tell me. I'm not sure how long I can last before I meet it again.